royalty is about $2,250 right now for Litecoin. Okay, I've been getting some questions on doing multiple cards in the same rig. I can't overstate this. It's not easy. It can be a pain in the butt. It can be very, very difficult and time consuming, and you're probably going to spend hours and hours and hours trying to get it figured out and get it stable, so it's not crashing 5 minutes after you go to sleep or 5 minutes after you go to work. With this motherboard here, it is the MSI FXA 990 GD80 version 2. All the cards that have a spot to plug in on the motherboard, they weren't great. But I had to do cable tricks when it came to getting these two cards to work here that are plugged into the 1X slots. The motherboard has 6 total, but basically if you're going to be connecting up 1X risers on this particular board, you're going to have to use, you're either going to have to bridge the port itself, or you're going to have to bridge the cable. After one almost failed attempt at bridging the ports, I took that off and built several cables here, where I bridged them in the cable themselves. Basically, I would recommend doing that. It saves you a big headache. If you're going to be pulling cards out of the computer and you still have it bridged, then it's going to sit there trying to detect a goddamn card that's not plugged in. It's a real pain in the ass. Bridge the cable. That way, if you pull the card back out, pull the fucking cable off, it works fine. No problems. You can also really easily move it. Let's just say when I was troubleshooting why the hell I couldn't get it stable, I was trying the top one. There's a 1X up there. There's another one right there. And down on the bottom, there's actually, it's a 16X slot that I believe is connected through 8X. That one also requires a bridged cable. So yeah, bridge your ribbon cables. The ribbon cables I would recommend, I've been getting them off of YouTube out of a Taiwanese company there. It's a 53 centimeter. If you search for this, you'll find it. It's a 53 centimeter 1X PCI Express powered riser cable. That brings us to the next thing, powered riser cables. When we were Bitcoin mining, you could use any riser cable. It didn't have to be powered, and it would work fine. And that comes down to the difference of how SHA is implemented on GPUs versus how script is implemented. Neither of them were designed to be used on GPUs, and both started out being ran on x86 CPUs. When they moved over to getting them working on the GPUs, they had to implement it differently. Script is implemented to where it uses the memory that's on the card, and it uses a lot of the memory that's on the card. Depending on what you've set your TC, your thread concurrency at, is how much it's going to use. On the 7970s, depending on which models you have, you don't need, for script coins, you don't need a high thread concurrency. 8192 will likely work the best for you. There is some 7970s that do better at 21,000 area, 24,000, whatever. The 7950s, all of them that I've had are either made by Sapphire or MSI. They all, across the board, run far better when they are at a thread concurrency of about 21,712. They pretty much don't go a whole lot higher than that, at least the cards that I've had, without having troubles. I think some of them, some of them can run higher than that. Like Mr. Kalva says, who wrote CG Miner, your highest meaningful thread concurrency can be automatically detected by CG Miner just by starting it from the command line with CG Miner -- script your full user and password and let it auto detect, and it's generally going to give you about a 20 to 21,000 thread concurrency, and that's going higher than that. You're probably not going to gain anything from it. Other miners will use more. I've played with Reaper and one other that I can't think of right now, but they can go 37,000 depending on how the miner is written. Anyhow, high thread concurrency is using a lot of RAM on your card, memory essentially on your card, and that is drawing power from the PCI Express bus. Which is fine. The PCI Express bus was designed to deliver current in addition to communication. When cards are plugged directly into it, hey, no problem. But when you put them on a riser cable, now you've got a little teeny thin riser cable that's going to, be trying to do 3 amps through it at 12 volts. I believe the one PCI Express revision, don't quote me on this, I did read it somewhere, was rated to go up to 75 watts, which would really surprise me, but I did read that somewhere. Yeah, so you need a powered riser cable. When I amp clamp my powered riser cables, they come back at about 2.5 amps being pulled off of it when script mining on 7950s. I do know some motherboards, high-end motherboards, like the Crosshairs, have an extra 4-pin Molex power connection right on the motherboard, generally right here. Other motherboards put them in other places to power the PCI Express bus, so you're not trying to pull, if you think about it, 10 amps. I mean, 2.5 piece, 5 cards plugged into a motherboard, that's 10 amps through your motherboard. That's a shitload of power that you're going to try to push through little teeny wires on the back of it, or even wider channels on the back of the board. It's too much. And so for the boards that support multiple cards, all of them that are, not all of them, but a lot of them that are rated for 3x and 4x Crossfire X support, you need more power there to power those cards, at least when you're doing memory. Gaming might not be a problem, or might be a problem. I'm not sure. I've never burned one out, but there's plenty of horror stories out there on the forums of people that roasted their motherboards, roasted their cables, started them on fire, and God knows what else from not using powered riser cables. When we were mining Bitcoin using SHA, it wasn't a problem because it's not RAM intensive, memory intensive. It's mostly core, which is why the 7970s were king for mining Bitcoins. The 7950s do very, very good on the script currencies, the cryptocurrencies. RAM. You'll read somewhere else people say you need to have the same amount of system RAM as what you have for video RAM. Well, that was true at a time before we had CG Miner. It's not true anymore. Yeah, I use about 500 megabytes of system RAM mining. That's about all that's in use. So anything will basically do if you're using CG Miner. Reaper, another very, very popular miner, sometimes able to deliver higher hash rates, depending on how it's configured, perhaps less stable. That uses system RAM, and you need a lot of system RAM if you're going to be using Reaper. My experiments with it, I wasn't able to get much better than I could with CG Miner. This system here has one 4 gig stick in it, as I split up its dual channel kit to power the other rig. 4 gigs, and it's running great with 5 cards. It's technically got 15 gigabytes of of video memory and 4 gigabytes of system memory. Runs fantastic.